Well, thank you everyone for coming to our virtual town hall so you can all hear from our city council candidates. We're excited that everyone was able to join us tonight, and thank you to all of the candidates who took the evening to come and talk to us about what your position is on different matters. We appreciate you being here. We apologize that the scheduling is at the same time as the vice presidential debate, and we recognize that. We didn't know that when we scheduled originally, so we apologize. I want to now turn it over to Jackie Weston. She is our new executive director. I'm excited that she is going to be filling this position for us at the chamber. Take it away, Jackie.
Thank you, Allison. And yes, I am Jackie Weston. I am the new executive director for the chamber. Even though I'm new to this position, I'm not new to the chamber. So I know quite a few of you. Most people here probably already know that the chamber is really supportive of our local businesses and the nonprofits. But what most don't know is we have a very active government affairs and economic development committee. That committee steps up to be a strong voice for our businesses and nonprofits at the local, state, and federal levels. They make recommendations to our chamber board of directors so that they can take a position on a specific issue or endorse a specific candidate for local office. That committee also weighs in on matters such as the homeless shelter and the proposed tax increase. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the committee formed a subcommittee that's focusing on the education for businesses about matters such as the PPP loans, giving out free PPP, and ways to improve businesses during these challenging times. They're also working closely with county supervisors and staff to get information to all of our local businesses about COVID-19, about grant opportunities, and the services that are available to our businesses from the county. So now that you know a little bit about government affairs, I'll turn it over to Richard Hall, who is the committee chair.
Thanks, Jackie, and thanks, Allison. Jackie mentioned a little bit about government affairs. For those of you who are not familiar with the committee or its role, we investigate issues that are important to the business interests of our members. A recent example of that was an effort to convert the Elmwood Hotel into a homeless shelter. We immediately mustered up and worked together with city and county to oppose that, and it was defeated. We felt that would be a strong detriment to local business in Auburn. I want to say, first of all, thanks to our chamber members and committee members in particular for their time, intelligence, and commitment to this process. They really are committed to good government and economic development in Auburn. And I'm going to give each of them a few seconds, 15 seconds to say hello and what they do. And I'm going to just run them in alphabetical order. So Monique, you're up first.
Monique Hall. I'm a local banker. I serve on the chamber board and on this committee. I also serve on the local economic development commission and Highway 49 Business Association. And I'm just happy to be a part of this. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Chuck.
Chuck Heiselman with Pioneer Community Energy. I've been on this committee probably for the last 10 or 12 years, and prior board member of Auburn Union Elementary School District and a longtime resident of Auburn.
Rich? You're muted, Rich. I think Rich may not be with us. Okay, because I see no video there. And one of our members has recused herself on this, I believe, and that's Amy Lind, who is a city employee, great member of the committee, has contributed a great deal, and we appreciate her time and effort. Jocelyn?
Hi, everyone. Jocelyn Maddox, Auburn resident and business owner. Representing the local Vintners Association and tourism industry.
Thanks, Jocelyn. And Nancy?
Yes, I'm Nancy Nittler. Nice to see you all. I'm a retired department head from Placer County. I'm active in the local Rotary Club. My husband and I own a business here in town for 20 some odd years. And I also serve on the Placer County Visitors Bureau board.
And Bill?
Okay, I'm retired, chamber member for almost 50 years, past president of the chamber, and I'm an ambassador with the chamber and have been for about 25 years now. But my wife and I owned a business downtown, Nancy's Records, for over 30 years and retired now, so.
Thanks, Bill. And I'm Richard Hall, chairperson of this committee, past president of the chamber, and board member for 10 years. So just for the benefit of the audience, just a recap of what our rules are. We're going to give each candidate a 2-minute opening statement, and the order of that was settled by a draw before the program began. And then they'll each get a 2-minute closing. And the questions are going to be all to every candidate. We're not supporting any questions to specific candidates in this event. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question and a maximum of 1 minute to rebut something that someone else has said. The questions that we're putting forward are drawn from those that have been submitted to us, as well as the ones that Chamber have worked out generally for its questionnaire of City Council. And if you're part of the audience and would like to offer some additional questions, you can do so on the chat. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, I mean, everybody's probably zoomed out these days, but at the bottom, there's a button that says chat, and you can click on that. And if you would type your question in there, if we get to it, we will certainly put that forward. We have about 16 questions and some multi-part questions in there. So it'll probably take the whole time to work through those. With no further ado, we're going to talk first and foremost about Measure S. And the Chamber, and in particular this committee, has been interested and active in the preparation for Measure S over time. We originally were supportive completely because it was a special tax as opposed to a general tax. And as a special tax, its uses were limited. As a general tax, it's not. And so I'm going to read you a pertinent portion of this and ask some questions. But I guess before I do that, we got to give everybody a chance to do their opening statement. I apologize. It's about
say Richard. Richard, did I get a chance to give my opening statement?
Well, you did, but you were vacant at the time. So would you like to introduce yourself, Rich?
Yeah, I'll try again. I guess I'm just working on my cell phone, so sometimes. Welcome to the meeting tonight. I'm Rich Johnson. I was a district ranger for about 34 years in Forest Hill, and I grew up in a family that was a small business family, a furniture store. And currently I'm on the County Planning Commission, as well as other things. And so at any rate, I want to welcome you to the nice meeting, and hopefully we have a very good discussion.
Terrific. Thanks, Rich. And everybody, Monique is going to be our timer tonight. And do you have a sound that you're going to play, Monique?
And you skipped me too, Richard.
I do, and you need to, Michael would like to introduce himself.
I didn't see him live and in person. So Michael, please go forward.
Thank you. And welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Michael Oakes. I have a business in town called Sundance Coaching. I work with a lot of the small business owners in our community and been a proud member of this committee for approximately 4 years. And I have, in addition to my coaching business, I have 2 online businesses, America's Custom Kennels and Women's Startup Club. So welcome, and look forward to hearing from everyone tonight.
Thanks, Michael. Monique, you want to give everybody a sample of the sound?
Tell me if it's loud enough. Let me turn it up a little bit more. I didn't want to be too disruptive.
Yeah, so candidates, is that going to be sufficient notice for you?
That's the 15-second warning?
That's your 15-second warning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All
And
right.
we have 2 minutes to answer each question this time, right?
Yes.
Correct. So,
and 2 minutes for an opening statement as well. So we'll start the opening statements, and Alice, you're first. So when you're ready, please come in.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone, and to you watching live on Zoom. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to share with you my qualifications and goals for City Council and answer any questions that you may have. My family settled in the Auburn area in the 1840s on a ranch near the American River, the same property where my sister and I grew up and where my mom still resides today. I spent most of my life in Auburn, attending local schools, volunteering countless hours in community service, raising my family, and serving in various local government positions, including for both the city and the county. This is my hometown, and I want it to be a vibrant, prosperous, and safe community for generations to come. Using my extensive experience and passion to make Auburn the best that it can be is my way of giving back to a community I love. I've dedicated more than 3 decades serving the public within state and local government, including serving in the cabinets of 2 California governors as Auburn mayor and city council member. I also chaired the Auburn Planning Commission for about 5 years before my unanimous appointment to the city council in May of 2020. I believe I was appointed in part because I was able to roll up my sleeves and get right to work. In fact, during my first few weeks, we hired a city manager and approved a balanced budget, and we worked very hard to assist our businesses in light of COVID-19. As a council member, a few of my priorities include stimulating our local economy. We have many stellar businesses in Auburn, which are the backbone of our economy, and we must work together to promote Auburn and our businesses and create jobs in light of COVID-19 and beyond. Also enhancing public safety with the high threat of wildfire and some criminal activity on the increase. Working hard to ensure a safe, enjoyable, and prosperous community are key. I will not only work in step with our police and fire departments to make sure they have the resources needed to protect Auburn, but will promote regional, state, and federal partnership to accomplish these goals as well. I look forward to discussing these and other issues tonight, and I thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alice. Appreciate that. Dan, you're second on this.
Well, hi everybody. I'm Dan Grumley, candidate for City Council. The first thing I want you to know is that I'm looking you right through in the camera and I don't have any notes. I'm not reading off a piece of paper, so I'm just speaking from my heart. I got involved in this race because I moved to downtown. I restored my wife. We restored a house. We spent a lot of time doing that. We live on High Street. And I started walking downtown and I saw all of these empty office spaces and storefronts, and I couldn't believe it. And then I went to the Downtown Business Association a couple of years ago and I said, hey, what's up with all this? This is the greatest economy, since the whenever, and why is downtown struggling? And what I got was, oh, it's not. That's just your imagination. And I actually did a map and I numbered these things and I showed other people. And then I started talking about some of my economic ideas to restore and revitalize downtown. And as I did that, some of the city leaders began to listen, and then they asked me to run for city council. Sandy Amara actually asked me to run for city council. At first I declined, and then I thought about it, and she asked again, and I said I'd do this. So long story short is, as I started to talk about these economic ideas, I didn't feel like anyone was listening. So I actually came out of retirement and I'm in my office downtown Auburn right here, a business that I started only 12 months ago right here. This has been the hardest economic environment I've ever seen, but still a brand new business. We've actually generated $1 million in sales right here in downtown Auburn. So I try to lead by example. That's why I'm running. We need to fund our fire department, our police department. We're a city that is underfunded. Our costs are soaring and our revenue's diving. So we got to revitalize our business districts. That's why I'm running. And I look forward to chatting with you tonight.
Thanks so much, Dan. Roger?
Good evening, everybody. I'm running for city council because I really care about the city and I want to use all my experiences I've had to try and keep Auburn moving forward. I spent nearly 3 decades as a police officer down in the Bay Area, and I rose through the ranks, and when I retired as a lieutenant. Once I retired, you start thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I spent so many years working for a city. I understand how the city works. I went through budget process, went through contract negotiations. I got a good feel for the city. So once we moved up to Auburn, I wanted to get involved, and I joined the Planning Commission, and which I was on for 4 years, and 2 of those years I was chair. Then I also spent about 5 years on the Technology Commission, and it was our responsibility to advise the City Council on technology projects on how to make the city more efficient. After I left, I did run for office 4 years ago, and I came in third, and there's 2 openings. So after I left the Planning Commission, I went to the Placer County Grand Jury, and I spent 2 years there. And I was involved in investigating a couple different cities in the area. It was very interesting to see what the city governments try to get away with, and it was our job to try and expose that and keep them in line. Then last year I spent the whole year on the Placer County Charter Review Committee. In fact, there's several measures on the ballot that you're going to vote for now, and they're all good good measures. So I support them all. Especially Measure I was mine, and I shepherded through, and it was really rewarding to see, you know, my measure actually make it onto the ballot. So take a look at it, Measure I recommend a yes vote on that. So I'm hoping that all my experience that I have, I can use it on the City Council, and we can face the issues and the challenges ahead with some different perspective, and that of being a city employee as well as working on commission. So hopefully I'll earn your vote. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Roger. Okay, Rachel.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rachel Riddell Harris. I wanted to thank everyone tonight for being here and thank the Chamber for having me. I hope to earn the privilege of being your next City Council member. I grew up in Weimar, so when you grow up in Weimar, you spend a lot of your time in Auburn. I was on the Junior Fair Board at the Gold Country Fair. I had multiple walks in the light parade. I worked the finish line at the Tevis Cup. So I've had a lot of experience here in Auburn, and I loved growing up here. After I graduated from Colfax High School, I went off to get a civil and environmental engineering degree, and I also have a master's in business. And I went off and I got my career going, but when I married my wonderful husband, I decided that the best place for us to be was to come home, and I showed my husband Auburn, and he fell in love too. So we ended up moving back here about 5 years ago, and we're raising our kids here because I want my kids to have the same wonderful experience growing up that I had with all the wonderful people around here. So though I have a lot of experience running energy programs, I've worked for the last 12, 13 years in energy, working for SMUD and Roseville Electric, mostly in local government, and writing those fun staff reports that all the City Council gets to get all the time. And so I worked doing that for 12 years, but I think my best qualification is my love for Auburn and the fact that I really understand what it's like to grow up here and how important it is to be supporting this town. So there are several priorities that I have, but the most important one to me is making sure that we have a general plan. We haven't done a general plan here in Auburn in almost 30 years. A general plan is really your roadmap for the future and where you want to go as a community with lots of community input. And we haven't done one since before there were cell phones. And so I think it's really important that we put ourselves back in the driver's seat and really as a community decide where we want to go rather than letting other things dictate what's going to happen to us. So that's what I think is the main thing that will help us to figure out all the other issues, and we can decide what's a priority together. So I appreciate you having me here, and I look forward to your questions.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Rachel. Appreciate that. Okay, let's start on the questions. So I'm going to read to you a portion of Measure S as it appears on the ballot, and I'm going to ask a three-part question. So sorry to be complicated, but it's a complex issue. It reads, quote, shall the measure to increase funding for general fund purposes in the city of Auburn, such as increased fire, police, and code enforcement services, be adopted? I'm skipping out part of that. But that's the exact language out of it. Which language is suggestive because it says such as. So what does that suggestive language mean to you? How would you spend the revenues? and track those revenues, since the tax collections would go into the general fund. And if you were faced with a fiscal crisis that's not directly related to public safety, but you had money in the proceeds from Measure S, how would you resolve that conflict? All right, Alice, you'll be first on this round of questions.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope I'll get these here. So the first one was, what does the suggestion mean with regards to the revenues generated from Measure S? And to me, yes, it is a general measure, but I am committed, if reelected or actually elected, to ensure that those funds are utilized for essential services such as fire, police, and there's associated public works component as well to support fire and police. When I scrubbed the budget, I determined that there just is not sufficient sustainable funding to provide the public safety services that our citizens and our businesses and our visitors deserve. And so I take that truly to be, for me, as a mandate, that if the voters vote for this, it shall be utilized strictly for those purposes. With regards to expenditure and tracking, I would spend it again on police, fire, and corresponding public work types activities. When I say public works, I mean like a chipper program, things that can help alleviate the fire threat within our canyon. Tracking, all the revenues that would come in would go into a separate fund within the general fund. And so it'd be very easy to audit. In fact, we would have an oversight committee for the purposes of tracking and establishing or helping the city establish the priorities for expenditure. I think so it'd be very easy to track that expenditure and ensure that the revenues are properly spent. With regards to a fiscal crisis, that's a tough question, but I will tell you that I am again committed to ensuring that Measure S monies would be expended for police and fire and that public works component. Because again, to me, that is what the intent is here. And that's the only way that I could bring myself up to support a measure like this. Someone who is a fiscal conservative who has never supported putting a ballot measure like this on the ballot. And so I would not use those funds for anything else, even in the light of a fiscal emergency. We would need to take a look at other cuts that we'd have to make. We have a reserve that can help us, just as that reserve has assisted us in the past during fiscal uncertainty and downturns. Just with COVID, we were able to move over $192,000 from our reserve. We have a requirement that we dedicate a percentage of our budget to the reserves, by the way. So again, I'm supportive of Measure S, but I'm committed to ensuring it's appropriate expenditure on those police and fire activities to keep our neighborhoods, to keep our business district safe, as well as our schools. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, Dan.
I'm not going to answer this question like a politician. I'm just going to give it to you straight. The measure's written wrong. It should go into a lockbox for public safety. I'm very weary of politicians giving assurances. That's the first thing. Obviously, the money's needed for public safety. We need to absolutely make sure My Due Station is funded. But the problem is, it was funded on a grant that was not sustainable. What was the last part of that question, Rich?
If there's a fiscal crisis,
yeah,
and
no,
you have money.
I would not use it for anything except public safety, period. But let me get to the bigger point here. Look, Measure S is just a symptom of a problem that Auburn's been kicking down the road for 20 or 30 years, and that is a city that's constrained and cannot grow anymore, cannot develop more residential property tax. And the problem is our business district all of them have been dying over the last 30 years. If we don't get our act together and really reinvigorate our business districts, we're going to have this problem over and over. Most people in the know understand there's one company in Auburn that I think almost makes up 45% of our sales tax revenue, which is insane. All they would have to do is leave town and you'd have a huge gaping hole in the budget. Nobody's talking about this. So the reason I'm here to work on revitalizing our businesses is so that through the growth of these businesses, we can fund the things that are needed. Money for our seniors, money for our police department, and money for our fire department. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Roger?
Well, both the candidates covered a lot there. I agree to some extent with both of them. I think that I would have preferred to have Measure S be not a general fund. There is obviously a lack of trust of politicians. They say one thing, they don't really follow through. I mean, I saw that when I was doing investigations of the grand jury. So that is a real issue. So we have to be very clear on what we do. Now, there will be an advisory group that will help set the direction of or how the money will get used. It will go into a specific separate funds. It will not get commingled in with general funds. So it'll be very transparent of where the funds are being used. To me, if it does pass, what it needs to be used for is enhancing what we have. And that means both fire, public safety, and our streets. We need to give something visible in return that the citizens need to be able to see. They need to know that their money is being used for something. They need to know when they're driving down Auburn Folsom Road and there's not a pothole in sight, that was worth it. Or that if they have a medical emergency and their fire officers, firefighters respond in under 3 minutes, it was worth it. Or if their home insurance doesn't go up or get canceled, then it was worth it. Because all those are possibilities without additional funds. Yeah, we are restricted. There's not a lot of room for growth. And we're going to have to find some way to find some alternative revenues. But at the end of 7 years, when we are done, this tax goes away. And at that point, they're going to ask for it again. There better be something to show for it. There better be something that said, yeah, it was worth it for me. So that's my goal, is to make sure that it's not spent in a manner it shouldn't be. As far as crises, no, it's not. That's not what it's meant for. The crises, like Alice said, we have a surplus fund. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue to put money in that surplus fund and use that to deal with any crises. Then, other than that, we have to look at our staffing levels and make cuts. But the other money should just be used for the purpose of enhancing our city.
Thanks, Roger. Rachel.
Thank you. So discussing Measure S, I am in support of Measure S. It was a little concerning how it came about, where it was first going to be a dedicated source of funding and then it switched to a general fund measure. But the thing I think that's really important when it comes to how it's going to be used is making sure that you trust your city council members. I was really concerned when everyone didn't want it to go in the general fund because they thought it would be used inappropriately. You know your city council members, you've met them, you've talked to them, and you need to make sure that you have that level of trust that they would do the right thing. Are they the people that will use your money effectively? And if that's the way that you feel, then I think that you should be able to trust them to do the right thing. I know that we need fire protection desperately. I don't want to lose the Maidu fire station and the 7 firefighters that are there. I don't want to lose the ability to go and do fire inspections or do fuel reduction. And so I think it's critical that we ensure that we have that funding source so we don't have a catastrophic fire and issues that none of us want to deal with and are all top of mind right now. So I think that, I mean, I would commit to it going to fires and public safety and public works, the places that it was dedicated to. And I think that if you know me, then you know that you can trust me to follow through, because I follow through on my word. Tracking, of course, like Alice said, there would be a separate account. I've worked in cities for 13 years and municipal government, and I know that there's an easy way to keep track of everything. There's an easy way to be transparent. We could put it out there on our website. How is it being used? How much of it is being used and where? It's really easy to be transparent if you want to be in a city. So I think that we can put some things in there to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and knows it's being used appropriately. And let's see. Oh, as far as an emergency situation arises, Of course, who knows? COVID caught everyone by surprise. I love that we have the reserve fund that we do. I think it was very smart for the city council to have that in place. But I also know that things come up that you don't expect. So I would, if there was something like that, I would expect to communicate with the community. If there was something that was going to take down the city, then I think everything would be on the table. But what I hope to do is to make it so we aren't in a fiscal problem, that we plan ahead, that we figure out what we want to do as a community, that we grow our revenue, we have more economic development, so that way we can grow our revenue rather than having it continue to shrink. And then I'm hoping at the end of 7 years that rather than renewing it, that we can either eliminate it or decrease it because our economy is doing so well, because we've planned it through and thought about what we want to do in order to grow our revenue over time.
Thanks, Rachel. Now, each candidate has the opportunity to have a 1-minute rebuttal to anything any other candidate answered on this particular question. Does anybody wish to be heard?
Yeah, I'll talk. You know, again, everybody, we're all good people. The difference is who has the experience in business. You know, I've generated millions and millions of dollars in new business. And the idea that our economy is going to somehow miraculously start thriving is insane, because just before COVID, we had this problem: diminishing revenue, increasing costs. So we need big ideas to restore Auburn.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone add? Rachel?
I guess that was pointed at me. I don't think that we're going to have a magic thing that's going to happen. I've worked with utilities that had decreasing revenue and increasing costs over the last 12 years. I've worked on coming up with out-of-the-box ideas and thinking of new things in order to grow that revenue, and I've successfully done that and helped companies come out with whole new business opportunities that they didn't know were possible before. So it's all about thinking out of the box. It's about being optimistic, talking about yes and how to get to yes. And it's also about us as a community talking about things together. It doesn't need to be just the people on the city council. It's really all of us. We're all smarter if we all work together. So I think that we can't be pessimistic about this. We need to think about what we can do together to grow our economy, and we need to start moving on it rather than being paralyzed by the fact that it's a big problem. You got to take some bites out of that elephant.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Anyone else wish to be heard on that? Yeah, Alice, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, again, one of the aspects of this particular measure would be that it would sunset in 7 years. We've talked about that. And really, I see that as a possibility, as a potential bridge. So we have an opportunity to increase our revenues. Again, I'm a huge proponent of economic development, and I don't think that anybody that's here today is against that, and that we all want to grow our businesses and to increase our revenue that way. But we need to address this now. The city council moved 192, actually more than that. They moved over $605,000 last year to fund the Maidu station. This year we funded it with $300,000. That came from reserves. We can't sustain it. Without Measure S, we can't keep that fire station open. So we need to take action now. Again, I support growing the economy, and I'm 100% there. I've always been there with our businesses, and I will continue to be there, and I support that. But this is important now. There's a according to statistics, there's a 62% probability that we will have a catastrophic fire based on the fact that we're in a high and very high severity zone. The need to take action is now, not 5 years down the road when we burnt to a crisp. So I just want to make sure that's clear. It's important. We need to take this action. And again, we as council members need to be accountable. And I'm committed to ensuring that those funds would be spent on our fire and our police services. So thank you.
Thanks, Alice. And Roger, go ahead.
I just want to add on a little bit more about the firefighters. Right now our city has an ISO rating of 3, and that's the insurance companies. And that's really good. But a lot of that's based on staffing. And they recommend that a city our size have about 21.75 firefighters. We're at 22. If we go down below that and cut out 7 positions, the chances are our ISO rating is going to go up, which is not a good thing, because some of that is used to determine homeowners insurance. So it is possible that you're going to pay a little bit more when you make your purchases, but there's a really good possibility that your home insurance is going to go up, and if not go up, and may even get canceled. So I think it's imperative that we keep that station open, and we need funding to do that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next question, where we're actually going to dig a little bit deeper into that subject. The question is as follows: what will you do with the tax collections to mitigate the existential threat of fire to Auburn? For instance, how would you direct spending vis-a-vis fire stations and staffing or other mitigating steps? And in this one, Dan, you will answer first.
Well, it's easy. I'm not a firefighter, and I respect a great deal our firefighters, and I would take guidance from our fire department. I know that they've done an incredible job creating fire breaks. I've walked those myself and been impressed with the work they've done. So obviously the question is, how would I direct tax revenues towards that? And I would basically listen to the experts and follow their lead.
Thanks, Roger. And I'm sorry, thanks, Dan. Roger's next.
As I said, we are at our recommended staffing level for our firefighters. So any reduction is going to make it more difficult to do that work and do that fire mitigation. Right now with the 2 fire stations, there's the ability of taking a crew out there and actually going out and doing some work and making inspections and making recommendations. If we don't have that second crew, that just doesn't happen. So we'd been a loss there. The fire chief last year did a report. It was a wildfire report to look at our danger areas in our city and identified all the hazards that we have along the canyon. The only problem is that we didn't look at the hazards elsewhere. I think that we all saw a few weeks ago with Perry Creek that there is a fire danger on all sides of us, not just on the wildfire. So I would have the fire chief take a look at that as well and see what we do to mitigate that danger. Also, we need to work with the landowners to try and get them to bring their property into a safety zone. Union Pacific is one. They have a big right-of-way through our city. So these are things I would direct monies to be used for, to make sure that we have the chipper program, that we have the fire break is funded, and we also work with the neighbors and try and we need to reduce our fire risk. And so that's where I would try and put the money towards.
Thanks, Roger. Rachel?
Thank you. Well, when I was speaking with the fire chief, he said that he had a great plan, and watching the city council meetings, you could see that they had really thought through how they should spend the money and why they needed the money and why it was so important. So if you haven't had a chance to see the presentation from the fire chief during the city council meeting, I would highly recommend you taking a look at it. He has some very specific goals and some very real answers to what we could do in order to improve our fire safety. Some of the things he highlighted to me were fire inspections. We have a lot of historic buildings, and some of them haven't been inspected in over 20 years. So that's an issue. I know of a business owner who said that they had someone in their business, someone who owned a business, and they leased out the property, that hadn't even had a fire extinguisher in their building. And that's an issue. So we need to make sure that our businesses are being safe, that the fire doesn't start within our town, but we also need to talk to the people in the different homes around the community. I love that the fire department goes around and hands out little reminders of things that you should be doing. There's some great things that the fire chief is doing with the staff that he has now. I would really be worried if we had to get rid of the Mighty station and the 7 firefighters, that we wouldn't be able to do fuel reduction and other things that are really critical to making sure that we don't have a catastrophic fire. So I would really look to the strategic plan that the fire chief came up with, and I know he's been thinking about this for a long time, and he's the person who's most knowledgeable on the subject.
Thanks very much. Alice?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, per the City Council's direction, the fire chief did put together what's called the Wildland Urban Interface Strategic Plan for 2019. You've heard a little bit about that from some of the other candidates tonight. It's a very well-written plan, very thought-out plan. I had an opportunity to review it very closely when I was asked to vote on whether or not to put forward Measure S. And again, our fire chief he's an expert. He's done a tremendous job from a proactive perspective in working with our community. And he brings a tremendous amount of knowledge from his other positions. We are somewhat unique in some instances because we have the canyon right next door. It's beautiful and we love it, but it is also a potential fire hazard. It really truly is. As I mentioned, we have that high probability of catastrophic fire occurring here. The plan itself it contains 5 separate prongs, and I would support utilizing the revenues from Measure S to do things like engineering efforts, which include our wild urban interface inspections, not just of our, again, and that's really the wildland areas, and also the inspections of our businesses, as I believe Rachel had talked about as well. The Auburn Shaded Fuel Break Project. We're all very familiar with that. And I have to say that during my tenure on the council, that we just began discussions what led to those. We didn't have shaded fuel breaks until I was able to move forward with that back in 1998, 1999. In addition, there's some FireWise landscape coordination that we can do with homeowners. On the enforcement side, there's a pilot project we'd like to fund. Again, I spoke to it, the chipper program for our communities that are FireWise communities where they trim their trees, they have extra brush, we need to get rid of it. So it would be great to have our own chipper. Also ongoing weed abatement programs and enforcing those and ensuring that property owners are responsible. We have education efforts, and part of that is, again, educating the public on what is needed to ensure that your home is fire wise, that your home is fire hardened, and that you have dispensable space. And it's also, there's programs like the Fire Corps volunteer program or the CERT volunteer program, utilizing our residents that have interests in fire protection to help us get our word out there. Emergency response, key. Of course, I support utilizing Measure S for the purposes of keeping the mighty fire station open. First and foremost, we need to keep them open. We need to be able to keep them available for emergency response in our community. Also, economic incentives. It would be great to be able to have discounts or offer to advertise discounts that insurance agencies can provide to customers because our community is FireWise, because we are taking the necessary steps to be protected from that threat of fire. So again, I would refer to that strategic plan for the expenditures on the fire side. We also have plans on the law enforcement side as well. And I would look to our experts, our fire chief and our police chief, who have done a tremendous job for us to help lead us in that direction. But again, at the end of the day, the council members vote on the expenditure of dollars, and I am committed to ensuring that we are protected. Public safety is paramount for me. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alice. Monique, apparently there's some trouble hearing the sound, so if you can, up the volume on that, that would be great. We appreciate that. Each of you candidates also have an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal to anything that was said on this particular question. Does anyone want to avail themselves of that opportunity? All right, seeing none, I think we're ready to move on to the next question. And Roger, you're going to be the first response on this one. And this is a multi-part question. Most observers agree that Auburn's fiscal health is vulnerable to collapse due to 2 major factors: unfunded liabilities and 40% dependence on gas tax revenues. Most observers also agree that the primary source of revenues for the city are property taxes and sales taxes. The questions are, what would you do to increase property tax revenues? What would you do to increase sales tax revenues? And what would you do to decrease expenses? And any other resolutions that you see to that current dilemma?
Okay, the raising property tax. The only way you're going to raise property tax is get some development in here, get some new homes. The property tax is pretty stagnant unless people move out. So we would have to take a look at our general plan as far as housing, our housing element plan, try and determine, is there things we can do, change, zones we can modify to bring in some multi-use housing, where we can have apartments on top of buildings, which would raise the property tax of those buildings. We need to look at how we're going to do that. We don't have a lot of room, and that's the problem. So we got to be very creative and basically take a look at everything we've done in the past and say, okay, how can we change it? I know that like the affordable housing, that the plan that came out, it's sort of a plan that, yes, you could do it, but the land is pieced together. We need to get a more centralized plan, take a look at the zones, and that's how we have to increase our property tax. Sales tax is going to be, well, we need to increase our sales, and that's no question about that. We need to bring people in here and to have a vibrant downtown where all the shops are filled. When you have a lot of empty stores, that's revenue that's lost, not only to the landlord, but to the city as well. So we need to, an economic development director is key. We had a one for a few years, and she did a great job. Worked on bringing new businesses to Auburn. We need to get that position back again, because we need to somehow attract more businesses. Then we need to look at other types of businesses, businesses that will also generate sales tax. There's some that don't, and we may not need the businesses that don't generate. So we have to take a look at the type of business and make sure they're going to generate sales tax for us. As far as spending, the sales tax, basically, it's sort of a broad question. You have our budget, and we have to take a look at how we're going to provide services to our community. So every year you look and see how much money you project to have, and you try and determine what's the best services we can provide to our citizens, whether it be public safety or streets, and tough decisions have to be made. And we have to live within what we get. We don't have the flexibility of just printing up money like other government agencies do. So we need to make sure we live within our budget. And I can't give you specifics, because the budget's rather large, $12.5 or so million. So it goes to a lot of places. So I'm just committing to make sure that we keep a balanced budget every year.
Thanks, Roger. Rachel?
Thank you. So the unfunded liability is tough. I've worked for several organizations that have had to deal with this, and it's really something that you just have to make a commitment to and work on slowly over time, and just take bites of that apple and get it done. So that, I think, is something that we know what we need to do, and we just need to make it a priority to do it, so that way it's not hanging over our head. As far as the gas revenue, and the fact that we have 40% or more percent of our sales tax that comes from that is a big concern, especially since our state is moving towards electric vehicles. Maybe it's not going to be entirely electric vehicles like Gavin Newsom thinks, but it's definitely moving in that direction. And so that's part of the reason why I was suggesting that maybe we get some additional revenue by putting in electric vehicle charging stations. I've worked on electric vehicles for the last several years for both SMUD and Roseville Electric, and I know exactly how you put them in, how they work, and where we could really get the best bang for our buck if we did put them in our city. So I think that's a possibility for not using something we've done in the past, but kind of thinking outside the box for a new revenue source. But yeah, we need to talk about diversifying our businesses, and part of that for me is having a plan of what we want to do. We need to talk about not just getting new businesses in, but what kind of businesses do we want to have in here? I don't think we all want 40 new tattoo parlors. That's probably not the thing that we want to bring in a bunch of. So we need to think about what it is that makes the most sense, how we can draw in businesses that will allow our own citizens to shop in Auburn. I would love to do more shopping in Auburn, but normally a lot of the businesses that I could shop at are closed after I get done off of work, and maybe the weekends aren't the best time for me. So I end up leaving Auburn a lot to go and buy a lot of the things that I need. So I think we should focus on trying to make it so it's more convenient for our own citizens to be able to shop in Auburn. I love our restaurants, but shopping has always been challenging for people who are working during the day. And then when it comes to decreasing costs, I don't really think that we should be putting in a bunch, well, as far as property tax, I don't think we should be putting in a whole bunch of subdivisions. I don't think that that really makes sense for Auburn, but I think we could definitely decrease costs. I think that something that has worked for some cities is creating an incentive for reducing your budget. I've actually worked for cities for a long time, and there's no, whether you, if you spend your whole budget, then you get it again next year. If you spend less, then you get less, even if you have something you want to do next year. So I think there's ways of creating incentives for performance for our employees that could really help to incentivize the correct behavior of trying to help to decrease those costs, and not giving any penalties to them for doing that. So I think that that's important, is looking at all of the budgets, making sure that we're really going through and incentivizing our staff for finding those cuts, and maybe rewarding them for finding ways of reducing our budgets.
Thanks, Rachel. And Alice.
Thank you very much. So this was a multi-pronged question. Yes, it's true. Unfunded liabilities is a big anchor around our necks with this in the city of Auburn. Right now, CalPERS estimates that we have about $19.56 million in unfunded liabilities, and that amount increases every year. Our projected cost just for 2021-22 is $1.32 million. This year, we spent $1.16 million. And that was truly a 30% increase from just 2 years ago. So we know that that payment number is going to continue to rise with each year. We are required to pay it. We can't get out of PERS. The penalties are incredibly too high, and we just don't have the means by which to establish our own pension program. So we are stuck in CalPERS, but we can be smart about it. And something that I'd like to pursue and look at with the city council is the possibility of looking into a pension bond. We did this once before several years ago when there was an increase on benefits to our police officers. I wasn't on the council at that time, but what a pension bond, which has no impact to the taxpayer, would do is it would allow us to finance at an incredibly low interest rate. Right now, that's what we've got going for us, are low interest rates. Let's finance that debt, and let's start having a set payment. Now, there is the possibility that our payments could go up a little bit, but guess what? The city council's been very smart. We actually have a portion of our reserve set aside for unfunded liabilities. So that can serve as a backstop. So that's one way I think that we can cut our costs drastically, and as a way that makes sense. And again, we're going to be discussing these issues at our October meeting. And this is something I want to bring up to my colleagues, is something we should consider. One way that we can increase property taxes would be to really address the fire issues, I think. If we can make our property values increase, that increases our property taxes, right? So again, making sure that we are smart about our fire-wise, that we are our threat to fire, that we ensure that the infrastructure in our neighborhoods is working and in good order, and that it again, in a way that helps to increase the property values, and open space as well. Again, I am someone who does support ensuring that we have sufficient housing to house folks who move here. And we are required to have affordable housing. There's a certain number we need there too. So housing can be done smartly. I'm someone who supports housing with the balancing with open space. We've been able to do that with some of our divisions, but the reality is, again, we don't have a lot of property for any big development. So it's really being smart about that. With regards to increases on sales tax, again, diversifying our revenue stream is very important. And we can do that by bringing in different kinds of businesses, both retail and service, I think are both important. We've got a fantastic industrial park out there. We were just able to bring in Tesla air conditioning. Fantastic company. We need to have more folks like them come in, and we do need to make some improvements, even again to the infrastructure for our downtown to help bring in more businesses and help to increase that particular aspect as well. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes. Again, when we talk, sorry, when we, so I talked about the unfunded liabilities. Other things that we can do to promote tourism. We really need to do that. We've established Auburn as the endurance capital of the world. We've done a great job. Events are great. We are a destination, and we need to continue to push that support our organizations that are working hard to have events. We've got local wineries and breweries and restaurants and performing arts and all kinds of groups that are doing fantastic things. We need to bring people here. We need to, so they can shop. We have the Auburn Home Show at the fairgrounds. We need to partner with our fairgrounds on those great events that they bring. 50 to 1,000 people, I think the home show brought in people at one time. Fast Fridays brings in up to 40,000 people. So it's important to focus on those kinds of things and bring those people over. So they're not just coming here and doing that, but they're going to shop, they're going to dine in our area. I think that we can do even more with our short-term housing. We have Airbnb, sorry. We recently have relaxed some of our rules with regards to those, and hopefully that will provide another opportunity for folks to come up and stay, and not just for one day, for a day trip, but to stay as well. We've got some good hotels and certainly support them as well. But those are just a couple of the ideas that I have.
Thanks very much, Alice. All right, Dan?
You can't tell me that was 2 minutes. But
Well, I think I might have lost my timer here.
anyway, look.
No, it's because they're talking and that Zoom doesn't interrupt.
Get over you guys.
So that's the problem.
All right.
So Monique, let me permit it, Dan, and let
This is a
Monique
simple
just
subject, right?
declare time, would you please?
One
I'm
second.
sorry?
I'm asking Monique when it's time to just say time or 15 seconds.
Okay.
You'll hear it.
Something. Okay. You're not going to grow this city. The only way you're going to grow this city is with multi-use zoning and ADUs. That's simple. The other issue is, let's talk real numbers, shall we? Measure S projects that we're going to have $2.5 million in revenue under the ideal situation. If 45% of our sales tax revenue comes from this one oil company, that's $2.5 million that's going to go out the door if they leave. And Measure S wouldn't do anything if those two things happen together. So what we're talking about is, how can you squeeze a turnip? And you can only squeeze or cut a turnip so many different ways. Auburn has to be in the business of growing more turnips. The idea is, when I started talking about these economic ideas for Auburn, I actually decided to come out of retirement, put a company downtown Auburn, and actually generate jobs, which I've done. So the idea is, we have to grow more turnips. We need the turnip to get bigger. I'm proud to tell you that I haven't spent my entire career in government. I did work for the government for 4 years as a U.S. Army paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, and that's the only government check I've ever taken. The idea is, we have to grow our economy. We can do that. I'm already showing you by example. I'm no better than any other candidate on this stage. And by the way, I'm not pointing any of my comments directly at any candidate. I know they're all good people. Honestly, I believe that. The idea is, we need private businesses. Private businesses are what built Auburn. Private businesses are what's going to save Auburn. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. All right, now's the opportunity for any rebuttal that anyone would like to make. 1 minute. Yes, Alice.
Yes, I'm wondering if the rebuttal can include a question of another candidate.
Sure.
Okay, so Mr. Grumley, I appreciate how much you want to drive new business to Auburn and diversify. I'm there with you. I agree it's something we need to do, and it's something we have tried to do in the past and we continue to do. We need an economic development director. But what I'd really like to hear from you tonight are some of these economic ideas to do this. I know you've talked about bringing the cars from 80, but I'd really like to know some specifics of these plans. What I hear from you are, these are great ideas and you have ideas, but I really would like to hear just a little bit more. What are your ideas? Can you share some of the specifics of your ideas?
I find it interesting. This is the first time you've taken the time to ask me that question, and the campaign's been 90 days or more. But let me answer the question. The question is, what do you do to take the traffic off of I-80 and bring it to downtown? Number one, I have an idea. First of all, I reached out to Trader Joe's myself to reignite that discussion to bring Trader Joe's right to where Pistol Pete's is today. So I'm part of that. I'm working on that myself. The second thing is all of Silicon Valley is driving to their homes in the Truckee area and North Shore. My idea is to actually bring high-tech startups right here to downtown Auburn and display their wares and connect that with Silicon Valley and have Silicon Valley adopt Auburn as the gateway to the Great American River Canyon. This is very doable. I brought a company in from Europe to do the murals, in fact, a starving startup, but they want
15 seconds, Dan.
I'm sorry?
15 seconds.
Yeah, so ask me a complicated question and give me 60 seconds to answer. So there you go.
Do I have a 15-second rebuttal, Ms.
I believe
Richard?
you have another 15 seconds left.
Okay, just really quick. It's my understanding that Trader Joe's, unfortunately, made a decision at the corporate level not to open any more stores in the state of California due to our regulatory environment. So I appreciate an initiative there, but it is my understanding that they're not opening any more stores in California, unfortunately.
I assume you're speaking for Trader Joe's now.
I'm not speaking for them, this is my understanding.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to the next set of questions. And Rachel, you will be the first to respond on this set. What can the city council do to make sure that Auburn government and Auburn businesses do not get left behind by technology with the emergence of 5G, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, autonomous vehicles, drone delivery, etc., that are all coming at us like a rocket ship?
Okay, sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Well, technology is huge. I helped work on several technology adoption programs, working for the utilities I worked for, moving over to smart meters, and especially working for a city government. It's tough moving technology projects. I've learned that normally technology projects are 10% the technology and 90% the people, and doing that change management with the people around that technology. So what we need to do is make sure that we're communicating with our community and making sure that we have that open resource back and forth. I know that a lot of the business associations have been working on classes talking about social media and how we're going to work with that. So I think it's really important that we keep up to speed on this. Maybe we make sure that we have not just someone casually working on technology issues within the city, but also that we have a staff person who's thinking about all those future issues and making sure that they're that subject matter expert and can really provide that expertise to the city council when they're asking those questions. But I also think it's important for us to go back to the community. Just because all this stuff is coming at us doesn't mean that we don't have a choice on how we handle it. We need to be in the driver's seat and not just let it happen to us. So we need to be talking as a community about the things that are coming in the future and planning around what we want to do in regards to those things. So it's not something that the city council is being caught off guard and has to make the decision on the fly. It's something that we've already talked about, how we want to deal with new technologies, how we want to proceed forward. And the city council is really just is really just the mechanism that allows us to proceed forward on our plan. So I think we're not gonna be able to predict what it is, but we can, as a community, can decide how we want to deal with new things as they come up, and then that'll help guide us through that process.
Thanks, Rachel. Alice.
Thank you very much. You know, technology is a passion of mine. It truly has been. It always has been. When I first got on the city council, we had no website. Again, this was 1998. I was the driving force to ensure that we actually had a website. And one of the things I wanted at that time was to ensure that we could ultimately get online permitting and online business license. And I will tell you, I was shocked when I came back to the city council in May after being appointed unanimously by the council members to learn that we still don't have online permitting capabilities in the city. So we need to embrace technology. It makes us much more efficient, more effective. We can get so much more done. We need to be able to be available to business owners, to residents, all hours of the night, and you can do that with technology. So again, I support moving forward with technology. I guess the old technology committee that the city had disbanded years ago, and I know that Roger will speak to that because he was a member of that committee. I'd love to see them back up in the drive. We need them again. We need them back to advise us. We don't want to be left in the dust. Not only do we need to ensure that the city is functioning as efficiently and as effectively as possible with regard to technology, but that we are able to provide that technology to our business owners as well. We talk about bringing in new business. We talk about bringing in Silicon Valley and high tech. Well, there are things they need. They need high-speed internet. They need all different kinds of transportation networks. There are other needs that they have that I'm not an expert in that particular field, but I know that there's technologies that they utilize, and we need to know what those are, and we need to be able to provide them so that we can attract them, and not just attract them, but retain them. So again, I think that our city manager is very committed to helping us move forward with technology, which I'm very grateful for.
15 seconds, Alice.
So again, we need to embrace technology, not only from the city's perspective, but also what we can do for our residents and for our businesses as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Dan?
Well, I've been in technology my whole life. Right now, our little company right here in downtown Auburn is writing our own software. So if you want a technology expert, I guess I am one. The idea is technology, the real answer on technology is the day that you adopt the technology, tomorrow it's old technology. So what we really need is a culture change in our city. We need a culture change that technology is part of our culture. And when we do that, we'll continue to update new technology. That's how Silicon Valley works. That's what will bring them here. And that's my goal. I'm only running for this position to help Auburn. There's nothing in it for me. I don't own any land or anything like that. I'm just trying to help Auburn fix its budget problems. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Roger?
Back when I was a police officer and sergeant, I was in Silicon Valley in Santa Clara. So I was very involved in technology and upgrading our city. And we took the city of Santa Clara way beyond any other organization. We were featured in magazine covers, stories of what we did. I had a grant from the state that gave our motor officers in about 1999, gave them pen tablets before iPads even thought of, taking police reports, using dictation. We always pushed the envelope, and I was the one involved in that, and that sort of followed me the rest of my career. Then after I left, I started my own company, and I did databases for police departments, and I have about a dozen out there now. So I'm very familiar with technology. So when I came up to Auburn, I was asked to be on the Technology Commission. There was a group of people there that very knowledgeable. They had expertise in all different areas. And the Technology Commission was responsible for advising City Council. And what happened was we got involved in a lot of different projects. We totally redid the phone system and upgraded to voice over IP. We went and got hotspots for the fire battalion chiefs, and we helped in other aspects with servers and email. But unfortunately, due to some changes in city managers, technology was no longer really that interested, and we got ignored. And it was unfortunate because we had a good core of people, and all they want to do is help and move Auburn along. So I want to make sure that that comes back, and that comes back properly with the support of the city manager. Hopefully this one will. And with the city manager's support and the council backing it, we can get the committee. We have a lot of great people in Auburn. We can put that committee back together and help move Auburn forward.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Roger. Okay, time for rebuttal. Would anybody have anything to say here? Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, all of their great thoughts made me think of something. I've worked in technology adoption, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, all that stuff for a long time. And what really matters is getting that early adoption, and there's a lot of grants in that. So food for thought that if we're going to be adopting to this new technology, we need to be also looking to different organizations that are responsible for early adoption, like utilities and other regulatory agencies, because there's a lot of money out there to help push our city forward. But we have to be looking for those grants and have the staff available to write those grants in order to really help us move in that direction. So there's a lot of opportunities having to do with early adoption, and I think that we can really move that forward if we're keeping our eyes open and open to being that early adopter versus being later on the back end where you have to pay for everything yourself.
Thanks, Rachel. Any further rebuttal? Go ahead, Alice.
Yes, just to piggyback on what Rachel had mentioned, grants are a great idea, and really, not just the energy side, but looking at ways that we can purchase equipment, and maybe even partnering with some Silicon Valley to be pilot projects. You know, have a pilot project within the city if there's something that we can utilize. So just to piggyback on that, thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, Roger.
I agree with Alice. I think that from my experience, when I was trying new ideas and pushing the boundaries of what the police department could do, I actually had companies send me things and say, hey, try this, try that. And if we can create that atmosphere here in Auburn through that technology commission, yeah, it's sort of fun to get some new ideas and new challenges. And so we just need to encourage that.
Thank you. All right, any further? All right, move on to the next question then. The City of Auburn's contribution to the Placer County General Plan, also known as our Community Plan, hasn't been updated since 1992. The Community Plan is meant to be a roadmap for the future of the City of Auburn and its area of influence, which extends beyond the city's borders. Updating the Community Plan has been estimated to cost $1 million or more. Should the city undertake that effort now? And Alice, I believe you're first on this.
Thank you very much. And I know this is an issue that has been discussed at length with regards to this particular election cycle. And Rachel, I know where she stands on this issue. You know, the general plan is indeed a very important document. The city, because of the cost, it's more than $1 million, because generally you have an environmental document that accompanies it. It's a very cumbersome process. It's a necessary one. What we have done is we've actually tackled it by elements, because this general plan does contain various elements or chapters, if you will. And right now we're undergoing 2 element updates, the housing element and the safety element. And we are scheduled to have those adopted in May of 2021 pursuant to state regulations. So we're going through those processes now. There are some grants or programs that are of funding that are available to help us with general plan. But to be honest with you, a full general plan overhaul at this time when we are dealing with COVID and our public safety threat just would not be on my list of high priorities. I think, again, if we can tackle it by elements, if we're able to find a funding source for it, but it's just, we are dealing with economic downturn, we're dealing with the COVID effects, and we're just, again, looking at more than $1 million of decrease in revenue, I think I just read, because of COVID in the next quarter or the next cycle. So we really need to be incredibly frugal and thoughtful with our expenditures. And I just can't commit to spending funds on that at this time. Again, we're doing the 2 elements, and
15 seconds.
And I would be interested in looking at a schedule for this later on down the road, but just not right at this moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Dan?
Well, can you tell I'm not a politician? The answer is no. No, you can't afford to update the general plan when you're raising taxes to save the Maidu fire station. It's a simple answer, no. I did sit down and had a long, lengthy talk with our new city manager, John, and Dunleavy. And the answer is, in speaking with him, I'm under the impression that there's a lot that can be changed and adjusted without not necessarily going through the complete revision of a general plan. So I'm very hopeful that we can do some of those things. Again, simple question, simple answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. Roger?
Yeah, the document is over 400 pages long, and I agree with both the other candidates. There's pieces we have to look at. But one thing that they did last time was they actually had a committee that did it. It wasn't done completely by city council. It was actually a committee, a group of citizens that got together. And I would encourage that we do that again, that we get a committee together and have our citizens from different aspects of the community take a look at the plan and say, okay, here's obviously we need to change this or we need to change that. You know, give some outside opinions of what needs to get done. It shouldn't have to be done by the city council, and we have a lot of qualified people out there. So that's what I would recommend we do, and we start that process right away.
Thanks, Roger. Rachel.
So a general plan is required by law. So I would want to make sure at the bare minimum that we're meeting the legal requirements. So that way we don't get sued or have some other legal issue. So whatever we can do to make sure we're meeting that bare minimum requirement in the immediate future, I think is important. When it comes, I agree that during COVID is not a great time to have to be spending money on a 400-page document. And I would have hoped that it would have gotten done in the up years, and I'm kind of disappointed that it wasn't prioritized. But I think that there are ways that you can do planning without having to have it cost $1 million, $1.5 million. I was just talking to the president of the school district, and she said they did a strategic plan recently that cost $10,000, and it's been very helpful to them. So I think there are opportunities really to make sure that we're planning and we're thinking about the future and that we're ready for the future and we're getting that community input and the buy-in from stakeholders to make sure that we have a vision for our community and know where we're going without it costing $1 million or $1.5 million. There's still ways that we should be making sure that we're thinking about things in a reasonable way, and in the long run, that's going to save us time, that's going to save us money, and it's also going to allow the city council to really have a direction and a list of priorities that they want to work on, and ultimately that's going to decrease our amount of money that we're spending on projects because we'll know what's important and the things that we should say no to because the community has said that's not important to us.
Thanks, Rachel. Now's the opportunity for rebuttal.
I'll take a shot at that if you want me to start. Or
go right ahead.
I just want to say that Rachel makes some excellent points, and I agree.
All right, Alice.
Yes, I think it's important to note that there is a difference between a general plan and a strategic plan or a vision or a visioning. 20 years ago, we had Vision 2020, which was comprised of residents, business owners, both in and outside of the city. They did a great job. They came up with a plan for how Auburn would look in 2020. Don't think they anticipated COVID though. But you know, that was a very separate process. A general plan is required to contain specific legal elements in it. And it requires an environmental documentation under CEQA. That's where your big expenditure is. We're required to have that. When we talk about zoning and land use and so forth, you have to have that environmental document, and there's no way to get around it. And as much as we'd like to have citizens do it, it's a professional plan. The citizens can be a part of it. They can be an advisory, but you've got to have people that are certified experts in these areas to develop your general plan elements. Bring in the volunteers to help, advise, but you've got to have the experts. And again, that's where the cost comes in as well. We're spending several $100,000 right now, unfortunately, with our other two elements, because we have to do it in accordance with state law. And we can't have a weak general plan or a soft general plan. It's got to be in compliance. So just wanted to lay that on the table. There is a difference between a strategic plan. I think that we're actually in the process of going through that with the city council. And looking forward and doing that. That's something that we can do and we should do. We should establish that kind of planning. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Hearing no one else, we're going to move on to the next question. And Dan, you'll be the first responder on this. What can the city do to increase support of economic development in parts of the city that are north of the freeway?
Yeah, good question. And that is, you know, when I speak about downtown Auburn, I'm not really speaking about the area that my business is in. I'm talking about all of our business districts. Old Town, on the other side of the freeway, you know, for my campaign, I used Advantage Printing. They're in that area, and that area is devastated. There's a bunch of empty buildings and so forth. So again, if we harness the fact that we're blessed to be sitting on the edge of the American River Canyon, and we get companies from Silicon Valley to adopt this cause of ours, and invite startups from around the world to display their technology to all of these executives that go up and down I-80 every single day by the hundreds of thousands. All of those businesses will naturally be thriving and be filled in. That's the concept. And, you know, this is not a new concept. Monterey, California had a completely dilapidated light industrial area that everybody knows was the Cannery Row. And now it's thriving because they've embraced the whole ecological preservation campaign of preserving the Monterey Bay. Well, we have the great ecological asset in our backyard, the American River Canyon. And all of these technology companies are keen to actually support ecological technology, clean energy, and so forth. So we can do this. It's been done before. We can, you know, I think that our city needs a budget of 25 million. I want to have, instead of 27 firefighters, I want to have 40. I want to give the city what it needs, and private industry is the way to go. Grant money and all this other stuff is great, but it's not sustainable.
Thanks very much, Dan. Roger?
Well, the Highway 49 corridor is just ripe for development. All the big parking lots, the large shopping centers, grocery stores, and we need to take a look at that corridor because that's where our growth can be. We need to work with the land owners and find out what would it take for them to redevelop that property or sell it to developers. We need to take a look at our zones if that's one of the issues and see if there's something we can do to change the zoning for that area to encourage developers to come in, because 49 is not the most attractive drive through town. And we can do a lot, and that is really the area. And working with the Highway 49 Association that represents all of the business community there, find out what they have to say. What do they recommend? And listen to what they say. But that's the area I would concentrate on, trying to redevelop the north side.
Thank you. And Rachel.
Thanks. I'd have to agree with Roger. I think that the 49 area would be a great area to have some redevelopment and to think through what we really want that area to look like and be like, and make a more of a comfortable situation for people to be walking around or shopping in different areas. It's really a place where you drive into the place you need to be and then you leave. And so I think that there's some opportunities there, which would be great. We need to think through what we really think would make sense in that area. And I think talking to the local businesses is really the best way to do it, because they've probably been thinking about it a lot for many years. I also think there's a lot of opportunity with the airport. There's some great businesses that have come into the airport recently, and I think that there's more opportunity there. Industrial type businesses are going to bring in more sales tax than a one-off small shop that's in Old Town or downtown. And if we're having sales revenue issues, that's something that we need to focus on. I think a way that we get there is to fund that economic development position and to also become part of the larger Sacramento greater area economic development groups, to make sure that when businesses are thinking about coming to this area, that they're not just looking at Roseville or Rockland, but they're also looking at Auburn. Even Loomis is part of those larger groups, and we're not right now. So I think we need to be making sure that we're part of that economic development pull, and that we have the material and all the things that we need to really display the best parts of Auburn, so that way people are looking at us as well. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity on the north side, but I think that it's like a lot of things, we just need to think about what we really want to do and what businesses we really want to bring in there, and then we have to go after it and get it, because I don't think it's just going to randomly show up.
Thanks, Rachel. Alice?
Yes, thank you very much. You know, it's right. We have businesses that are located not just in Old Town and downtown, and they are just as important to our community. And, you know, some things that we can do is to help with the infrastructure out there. Highway 49 is a highway. It's under the control of Caltrans. I'd really like to see if there's some ability for us to harness some additional funding to beautify that area, to make it more attractive, that would certainly help things. I think that an economic development director, absolutely. I've been supportive of ensuring, to actually fund that position. We had to defund it in the last budget because we were so much in the hole that we had to make a cut there. But I've made it very clear to my colleagues on the council that when we discuss the budget again, I'd like to be able to fund that position. I'd like to be able to utilize, for example, a portion, a justified portion of our airport enterprise funds for that position, because we do have a phenomenal airport, a phenomenal business park out there, and they need economic development assistance as well, that they could get that from an economic development director. We actually had Auburn Industry 2000 back in 2000. I think we did one for 2001 and 2 as well to help bring attention to that area, because we do have some vacancies out there as well, but fantastic opportunities. So driving some economic development out there would be very positive. And also, I know that there is a Highway 49 Business Association. They represent the businesses up and down Highway 49. And so really partnering with them maybe even more to see what businesses need, how can we assist them? Are there programs, CBDG monies that we can perhaps provide for newer businesses that are opening in that area, or renovating?
15 seconds, Alice.
So definitely all of Auburn's economy is important, and helping all of our businesses is just as important. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. All right, the opportunity for rebuttal. Would anyone like to be heard?
I would just like to say that the city of Auburn does participate as a member of the Placer County Economic Development Board, and that is a very important board that looks at regionalizing our economic development. Perhaps we can be even more active in those efforts. The county has a phenomenal economic development staff person, and she's helped us as well. So, we're moving forward in that direction as well.
Great, thanks, Alice.
Yeah,
So,
I'll take a shot at that. Look, folks, what we're talking about is, if we had such a phenomenal economic director with Placer County, they do a good job. We compete against our own county because of decisions that were made years ago. We have to bring private business, grant money, and all of this other government subsidies to try and save our downtown will not work. And we need big, new, bold ideas to restore our budget. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Roger.
When you talk about the county and what they have and what Alice brought up, that is, when I was on the grand jury, we actually had the person in charge come and give us a talk about what they do. And the bringing in new businesses, helping businesses get started is their goal, but they don't really do that work up here. It never was an agreement to work together. It's all done pretty much in the Roseville-Rockland area. So I agree with Alice. We should probably try and create more of a relationship with them. Maybe open up a satellite office up here so we can start having people come here instead of going down to Roseville-Rockland. So that's a possibility, and it's worth looking into.
Alice, I think you may have a few minutes left.
I just wanted to say that regionalization is critical, and that we don't live in a bubble. And so, yes, participating with our sister cities and our county to attract really big business is something that we should continue to do, or actually look into more of that. Cities of Lincoln and Roseville and Rockland do this, where they partner together to bring in business and to bring in people. And maybe we really need to take a more active role with Placer County. Our relationship has changed with them. And I think that it's ripe for the picking now, that we need to step in there and to utilize whatever assistance we can from them. I know that I have personal relationships with folks at the county, and I am looking forward to utilizing them and helping us move forward as a region and as a city.
Thank you. All right, the committee had identified a number of key questions, and we've got 2 more of those to go through, but there are some questions that have been posted on the chat room by our audience, and we're going to get to those as soon as these 2 are done. We'll stop the questions at about 7:50 to give enough time for each of our candidates to give their closing statement. So the next question up, and Roger, I believe you're first on that, is what are your specific proposals to help businesses survive and prosper through the COVID times?
Well, the COVID times, right now, the city's doing a pretty good job of working with the cities and having their Friday meetings and working with the restaurants and so forth. The grants that have come out from the county has been a great assistance to them. All we can do is try and drive more business into our city to try and help them. We need to take a look at if there's any restrictions that are keeping them from being open later. What does it take to keep them open later? We need to somehow get together with all the associations, say, how can we advertise? What can we do to draw people up here? Now, it's a broken record. The economic development director, they did that. We lost that. We need to find a substitute for that until we can fill that position. So it may be a joint project with all the different associations. Say, okay, let's get together. And then maybe the city would be able to fund some of that and fund some joint advertising. We have to take a look at that. And because the only way we're going to help our community, our stores, and our restaurants is to draw people in. And it should be our responsibility to help.
Thanks very much, Roger. Rachel?
All right, thank you. So the county's been doing a great job, and the city's been doing a good job of communicating the different grants and things that are available for businesses. Hand sanitizer and masks have been plentiful, and there's been a lot of work done on making sure that we're meeting those minimum requirements. I think what we need to do more of is communicating with the community about how different businesses are doing. I think that Auburn is a very strong community and has some very strong thoughts about working together and helping out those people in need. I've seen it in numerous occasions having to do with donations to food banks and other types of opportunities to help. And I don't feel right now that I know which businesses are having a difficult time. I would love to have, I know our website's a little lacking, but I'd love to have something on our website or a Facebook page for the city. Right now, the best way I get information is from the mayor's Facebook page, but not everyone knows to go to that or another person who's actively involved in the community. If you're just a random person who's working, it's hard to figure out what those avenues are that you should be really looking to figure out how you could be helping our community. So I think the biggest thing is communicating with the businesses, making sure that they have what they need. And if they're having a hard time, communicating with our local community and letting people know, because I think that everyone would rally around our local businesses. And at the same time, I think moving forward, we're going to have a lot of people who have a difficult time staying in their homes, having a difficult time putting food on the table. So I think we need to not just rally around our businesses, but we need to rally around those in our community who are having a difficult time because of COVID with their families or other situations that have come up. So I think COVID is really a situation that can bring our community together and let us all work towards a common goal of ensuring that we all make it through this and get through to the other side.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Alice?
Thank you very much. You know, as a city council member, I've been working very hard with my colleagues to help our businesses in light of COVID. Some of the things that we've done is we've been advocating strongly with Governor Newsom to open up and to relax requirements based on our numbers here in Auburn. We'll continue to do that, to bulldog that issue. We've worked with the chamber on the distribution of PPE. Very proud of the relationship we've been able to do and hand out hand sanitizer and masks to businesses that may not have had the opportunity to purchase them early on. And even now we're handing out hand sanitizer to the public because we've been able to acquire so much, or the chamber has, I'm sorry there. We have relaxed requirements for businesses so that now yoga studios can conduct yoga classes in public spaces where they haven't been able to do that before. We've relaxed our dining requirements and people are eating in the streets. Kind of sounds funny, but the fact is they're doing it. I know that two of my colleagues and I have been out there ourselves moving planters around, making the area pleasant for outdoor diners at some of our outdoor restaurants. And I'm proud to be able to help do that. You know, no task is too small to undertake when it means helping out our businesses. I love the initiative that our partners, our city, the public-private partnerships that are being established with the nonprofits in our restaurants, the Auburn State Theater working with the Station House so that both of those entities can thrive, and the community as well, allowing the community to come out to celebrate something instead of being locked indoors and doing it safely. We need to encourage more opportunities like that and to support them as much as we possibly can. Also, I think we're doing a great job with regards to our grant program, or not our grant program, but the county, and getting the education out to businesses and what's available to them.
Alice.
So I will continue to work hard to help support our businesses and have our weekly meetings. They are the backbone of our economy. When they thrive, we all thrive. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Dan.
Well, look, our business districts were struggling way before COVID. So COVID is only making things worse. COVID is literally putting an exclamation point on problems that we've had for 20 or 30 years. So, you know, I get right back to the basics, and that is we got to be in the, you know, growing more turnips, bigger turnips, instead of trying to cut one turnip in so many ways. You know, as I said, I actually founded a business, put it downtown, got my business license, hired people that had no experience in what we were doing. And, you know, frankly, for the last few months, I'm writing checks to my employees and there's no check for me. So, you know, that is the real life of a small business person. So I know what it's like. And I know, you know, the really wonderful thing is Auburn's best days are ahead. We have something nobody else has. We have all of these cars driving right by us with millions and millions of dollars only 25 yards from downtown or the other side of the other business district. We have this huge ecological asset. And if it's not Trader Joe's that we bring in here, maybe it's Sprouts Market, maybe it's a different, who knows what it is, but we have to create this, this proactive approach to bringing businesses in. And the reason I started this business is to lead by example. I was a paratrooper, and that's our first lesson. You jump in behind enemy lines and you lead by example. That's how we're trained. That's why I'm doing it.
Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, now the opportunity for rebuttal. Anyone wish to be heard? Alice.
Yes, thank you very much. So Mr. Grumley, I just had a couple of questions. I appreciate wanting to take a proactive approach. I'm all about being proactive. I was wondering if you could be a little bit more specific in exactly what you mean by your plan. And also, you've talked several times this evening about your personal business, and I was hoping that perhaps you could share with us what that business is. I know that you've communicated that you employ some folks here, local folks, and that you're making some funds, but I'm just wondering, I have people ask me also what your business is, and I'm not able to answer. So I was wondering if you could maybe share that with us as well. Thank you.
Well, I would assume you can't answer that because you don't own my business.
Don't.
But on the other hand, you've asked me like 5 or 6 questions and I'm able to answer in 60 seconds. That's not much of a rebuttal. A rebuttal is a statement. It's not a question. So I'm not sure which question I should tackle in 60 seconds. Do you want to limit it to one?
Why don't you talk about your proactive approaches specifically?
Well, proactive was I contacted Trader Joe's. I went down to Pistol Pete's. I talked with Pete Arrows. That's proactive. Let's figure out what's stopping us from putting a business down there to anchor our downtown sector. That's being proactive. It's not waiting for something to happen. Again, I'm no better than anybody here. I'm just a business guy trying to help downtown and all of our business districts. So that's my, expertise.
Thank you. Roger or Rachel, anything?
Or can I respond to that, Richard?
I think we're out of time, Alice, on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that the biggest issue is downtown. When you talk about all the cars going across down the freeway, they all stop in Old Town. And because it's so convenient, it's right off the freeway. We don't do a good enough job of marketing downtown. to get the public aware that there's a downtown. Most everybody you talk to about Auburn, they can tell you all about the Ale House or Carpe Vino, but they don't know downtown. So our job to help those downtown merchants is to try and bring people in through advertising, through signage. And so we have to take a look at that. Some years ago, there was a move to put an arch across the roadway, which unfortunately never happened. Something to attract attention to downtown. So that, well, bring people in, that'll make businesses want to come in if they see the people there.
Thanks very much, Roger. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I think that there's one thing that we tend to talk about businesses, but we don't talk a lot about nonprofits. And I think nonprofits are a very important thing to remember right now. They're all having a difficult time too. And in some places like the State Theater, even more of a difficult time because of just the setup and the way that people have to come in large numbers, and they can't right now. So one of the things that I saw is that the State Theater was having a hard time, so I offered to help them with their social media account because they didn't have a lot of people that were as familiar with how to do a GoFundMe account and how to forward it around to people in order to get that funding and how to make that ask, that very urgent ask. And I was just helping the Placer Nature Center was putting out a letter, and I said, do you have a GoFundMe account? Oh, I'll make one of those right now. So I think the big thing too with COVID is making people aware that there's avenues that they haven't used yet that they really could utilize, especially with some of the millennials and younger generations that really grew up in these places and really would love to help, but don't look to the same news sources or talk to the same people that these nonprofits normally talk to. So I think we need to really make sure that we're utilizing all the communication channels and that we're able to make sure that we diversify the way that we're talking to people. So that way we can get all the money that we can and all the resources we can to help everybody and work together as a group.
Thanks very much, Rachel. All right, we're going to move on to our final question here. And we've covered a lot of territory, broad ranging questions. This is an opportunity for you to really prioritize your answers at this point. And we're not going to do rebuttals in this section so we can finish as close to time as possible. So what are your top 3 priorities and what specific proposals would you make to address the priority issues? If the proposals cost money, how would you pay for them? And Rachel, you're up first on this question.
Okay, top 3 priorities. Sorry, give me one second. So obviously my first priority would be planning and making, if we can't afford a general plan, then making sure we at least have a strategic plan. So that way we know what we want to do and we're all on the same page moving forward in the same direction, because I know that we all have the best interest of Auburn at heart, but maybe our views on what the best interest of Auburn may be different, and we all need to talk about what that is. I would say the second priority would be making sure that we have the appropriate funding that we need for fire safety, police and public works as well. But I think that top of mind for everyone is fire and making sure that we aren't at risk for catastrophic fire from the canyon or from our buildings here in the community. And I would love to keep the Maidu Fire Station. My community got together and bought them a smoker so that way they could make food while they were out. And I think that they're a key element of our community that I'd like to keep there. And then, well, that one would obviously be paid for by Measure S, or if we can't afford, if Measure S doesn't pass, then we'll really have to talk about what our priorities are and whether we need to cut in other places or whether the Maidu Fire Station has to go until we can figure out long-term how to fund that in perpetuity. And then my third issue, I think, would be making sure that we are thinking about and preserving our community as far as the environment goes, making sure that we are thinking about the way that we use the land, that how clean our air is and how clean our water is, and that we're making that a priority. I know a lot of people are concerned about how much that costs, but I've worked for a utility for years where we've been able to make it so it's a win-win proposition to reduce emissions into the air, where we can go in and do energy efficiency in somebody's building that reduces energy use, but it also reduces the operating costs of that business, and so everyone's happy. So I think there are ways that we can do win-win situations to make our environmental goals possible.
Terrific. Thanks, Rachel. And Alice.
Thank you very much. So my top 3 priorities would have to be public safety being first. again, we've talked about the fire, the threat for catastrophic fire here is so significantly high, and we need to do something to ensure that we can protect our residents, our business owners, and our visitors as well. So that really is my highest priority. I see Measure S as an opportunity to help kickstart that additional funding. Again, it's a 7-year deal. And I'm hoping that we can, in that time, truly stimulate our economy through the bringing additional businesses and keeping businesses, because it's not enough to just bring them here, but to generate some additional sales tax to offset that, what's coming in from Measure S. Economic development is my second highest priority. Again, stimulating our local economy. And when our businesses thrive, then we thrive. And we do need to have an economic development staff person. One of the suggestions I've had with regards to staffing that individual would be using some of the airport enterprise funds. Of course, we'd have to be very careful in the utilization of those funds. We'd have to be based on the percentage of use out there. But it is key. And I think that person's work will pay for itself as well as our driver for the economic stimulus here in the city. Also, aging infrastructure is very important to me as well. And that's a tough one. Finding funding sources for that. We all hear as council members about the pothole, the streets that haven't been resurfaced, the sidewalks that are crumbling. And you know, the city did have an overlay program. They were putting $500,000 aside for that every year. But now COVID came in and we had to utilize those funds to keep our police open and our fires. So we weren't able to put as much in there. But there are opportunities with the local transportation funds that come from Placer County Transportation Agency and also the SB1 gas monies. A lot of those funds were tied up for the Nevada Street project for quite some time, but we need to utilize those monies now to help our aging infrastructure. We also have an issue with our closed landfill cap that we need to address by law. So we're going to have to think see if there are some grants and opportunities to help us fund that as well, as it is required to be fixed by state law. So those are really my top 3 priorities. I think that also we can come up with some monies with the issuance of a pension bond to help with our unfunded liabilities mandate. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. And Dan.
My three priorities are take care of our senior citizens, and not in this order, but first public safety, including law enforcement and fire safety, and then take care of our senior citizens. Those are my priorities. What I also have put in all my literature is I'm pro-environment. I'm real proud of that. You know, I want clean water, clean skies. And as I've discussed briefly in this forum, is that we can leverage the fact that we're host to the American River Canyon and set the example for environmental stewardship. And we can actually generate a lot of money for our city by acting this way. So if we do this and we use the economic template that Monterey, California has already used, embracing the environmental asset, getting Silicon Valley to sponsor it, I know that we can generate this revenue to provide the resources that we need for public safety and our seniors. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. And Roger.
You know, I wrote down my 3, and of course, Alice did my same 3. So I agree. Fire. I agree. Fire is essential. As I mentioned earlier, that we are at our minimum staffing now, and if we have a fire like occurred in Paradise, even Santa Rosa, and we lose any part of our downtown, it's going to be even that much harder for economic development because there won't be a downtown, and that would be devastating to us and to the people that live here. So that's my #1 priority. We have to keep it funded. Now, no one's talking about how you'll fund those 7 firefighters. What I would recommend doing is that we do use Measure S funds to make those 7 firefighters permanent. Now, that sounds against what we're trying to do with the funds, but in 7, then after that, we would freeze those positions and only hire temporaries again. And then within 7 years, you're probably going to have, through attrition, 7 firefighters leave. But the main thing is to make them permanent, because right now we are a training ground. We're bringing people in and temporarily, we train them, they go to another city and start working. So we need to fix that and keep them here. The other one, economic development director, no question, we need to do that. Without that, our businesses are sort of on their own. We need one person, one central location, one person responsible for making sure that they listen to all the associations and that they help all the associations promote our city. And finally, roadways. I mean, I drive through the city and it's not very comfortable driving through the city with all the potholes and the cracks. When I walk to different areas in the city, that's one of the things people mention is the roadway conditions.
15 seconds.
Fixed. So I would make sure that we find the funds to start that process again. They've been neglected way too long.
Thanks, Roger. All right, it's that time for closing arguments. And Rachel, you're first up on that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with all of you. I know how important our businesses are here in Auburn, and I know in COVID especially, it's a difficult time for many of us, whether we're trying to keep our business open or we're trying to do remote school with kindergarten. It's just a difficult time for everybody. And so when I look at my daughter's face, I realize that the decisions that we make right now are going to be impacting her and her friends for the long term. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to run for city council, because I thought it was important that we make sure that we're on the right track and we're moving in the right direction moving forward. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be something I can cut a ribbon on, coming up with a long plan or fixing the budget, but it's something that needs to get done, and we just need to dig in and do it. So that's really why I'm running. And I think there's many things. I mean, I said my top 3 priorities. I thought of probably 4 more while we were sitting here there's a lot of things to do, but I think it's important as a community that we all come together and figure out what it's most important to do first and what we prioritize as a community. So that way we can move forward together, and we can, and the city council can have the trust of its community that the community is doing the work that they want them to do, and that we're all gonna be on the right track moving forward. And thank you so much for your time. I ask for your vote.
Thank you very much. And Roger.
As you heard, all the candidates have one thing in common. We all really care about the city, and we're all running only because we want to try and help. We want to take our experiences that we've had in our life and see what we can do to help guide Auburn through any kind of troubled times that we're going to encounter. So I really appreciate all of you actually taking the time and watching this to make an intelligent decision on who you should vote for. You're not depending on how many signs you saw or how many flyers you get, but you're actually taking the time. And I want to say I appreciate that. So I'm hoping that now you'll take a look. It's time to vote. The ballots are out. That you'll take a look at everybody's experience and decide what experience you feel is necessary to be on the city council. I hope when you evaluate my experience of we're actually working for a city for close to 30 years and all my work on my commissions and grand jury, that you see that I do have the experience that will help the city council, and we can guide Auburn to the next level and through the crises that we're currently experiencing. So I ask for your vote. I'm on the top of the ballot, so make that first check mark. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Dan.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time to tune in tonight. I don't know how many of you are out there. You know, I'm volunteering to try and help the city. We have this crisis that has been building for 20 years, and that is, you know, business districts that are being degraded. And we have the cars right here. Come on, this is not that hard. We can do this. I really think that Auburn's best days are ahead of it. I love Auburn. You know, I live downtown. And I like all the colorful personalities. I actually like everybody on this forum. You know, the truth is we have different skill sets. And I think that what we need now is economic development to fund our fire department, to fund our, you know, police department, and to, you know, take care of our seniors and so forth. So, and most of all, not most of all, but fourthly, is to fix these streets. For goodness sakes, for 30 years, we haven't managed to fix the streets. That's crazy. You know, let's get our business districts moving. Let's create the revenue that the city needs. And after that's accomplished, I'll be happy to step away from the city council and let other people do it. We need new people, new blood, new ideas. So thanks for tuning in. And I've enjoyed speaking to you all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Alice?
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to the Auburn Chamber, not only for hosting tonight's candidate forum, but also for supporting Auburn and all that you do for our businesses and our community as a whole. We're very fortunate to have you. I'm grateful to give back to my beloved hometown. I served on the City Council from 1998 to 2005. And during that time, we were able to increase the city's revenue despite the onset of an economic downturn. And we tripled our reserves so that we could fund the city during the economic downturn and now during COVID-19. I promoted economic development and tourism with projects like Auburn Industry 2000, 2001, and also the declaration of Auburn as the endurance capital of the world, where we actually do harness the nature and the beauty of the American River Canyon and all its glory, the trails, systems, and so forth, to bring people here and to have them shop and stay. We can certainly do more, but we are on the right road in that particular regard. I led the efforts to convert our part-time fire department to a full-time fire department, and I began the initial discussions with our federal and state and regional partners regarding the need to develop an actual fire management plan. There wasn't one at the time, and when I was mayor, I brought us together and we talked about it, and those were really the stepping stones for the Auburn Fire Safe Council. And the progress that they've made since then. 15 years later, and it's time for me to give back again. I'm not the only one who thinks so. I'm endorsed by the Auburn Local Firefighters 4110, Mayor Berlant, Council Members Spokely and Mackey, Placer County Supervisors Holm, Gustafson, and Gore, 10 former Auburn mayors, including Bridget and Kathy, and many more. As based on my extensive experience, proven leadership, and my deep passion for the community, I'm the right candidate for the right time. Please visit votealice.com for more information, and thank you again.
Thank you. And on behalf of the committee and the board and the chamber, I want to thank each of you for participating in this. After 25 years in Auburn, I still remain absolutely amazed at how dedicated the folks in Auburn are to the city and its well-being. 2 of you are going to get elected, 2 of you aren't, but you can still participate and help out the city whether you are elected or not. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you do for Auburn and what you'll continue to do for Auburn. I want to specifically thank the committee for all its efforts to put this together, the board, and Jackie for all of her efforts to set this up. I want to remind you that this session is recorded and it will be posted on the chamber website. So if people were watching the vice presidential debate and not watching you, I can't imagine why that would be the case. You can point them to this video recording on the chamber website. Again, thank you very much. And we look forward to working with you all through this process. Good night now.
Good night. Thank you.